Hey guys, what's up? It's Aiden, and welcome back to another video. So today on the agenda, I wanted to rank all of the Wii era controllers. So this is going to include controllers from the Nintendo GameCube, which I'm including because you can actually use them on the Wii and Wii U. And I'm also going to include the controllers on the Switch, as you can see, because why not? I mean, might as well include them just because. So let's go ahead and get started. So first up on the list, I'm going to be using the original GameCube controller. So I'm actually going to be putting this one right up in A tier. So the reason I'm doing that is because it has that slightly unconventional button layout, but honestly, it makes a lot of sense because you have the main button, which is obviously the largest. Then you have B right beside it, and Y and X, like kind of orbiting around the. It's kind of like the solar system. You got A is the sun, and then the other buttons are the planets circling around it. The reason I'm putting it lower is because the D-pad is so small. There's only one Z button, and there's no select button. And also, never use this for classic games on the Wii. I've tried this. It sucks. Old 2D platformers absolutely stink with this thing. So next up is the Wavebird controller. So the Wavebird is actually going to go into S tier. If I can move it there. So I'm putting it in S tier because it actually, the only difference it has is it's larger and slightly more comfortable to hold, and it's wireless, and you can take it all around the room because it uses radio signals. It's actually the first wireless controller to use such radio signals. So for those upgrades, I'm putting it into S tier. So next up, we have the original Wii remote. So this one is, I guess I can put it into C tier because it was very revolutionary for the time. It had decent motion controls, I guess. It had a good size, I guess. It molded into your hands for sure. It felt like a TV remote, like it was supposed to. The main problems I have with this one are the fact that holding it sideways is really bad for NES games. I tried to play this with the Super Mario Bros. Demo on Smash Bros. Brawl. It absolutely stinks. It's much larger and thinner than that controller, so it just feels awkward. So for those downgrades, I'm going to put that into C. So next up, we have the Wii Classic controller, which I'm going to put into B tier. It is definitely more in the mold of the GameCube controller, although a lot less in the mold of the GameCube controller than, say, the Switch Pro controller. So I'm putting this one into B tier because it has really good feel, and the shoulder buttons are amazing. It goes back to your standard 2 analog sticks. It's got the same amount of buttons, or I think it actually adds 2 or 3 buttons than the GameCube controller. But those buttons really don't matter much. It adds the second Z button, which, speaking of the Z buttons, they are so small. It adds the minus and plus buttons because it's going to have at least all the same buttons as the Wii remote. And it adds the home button, which obviously goes home. There's also this little thing that you press down the middle, which really just doesn't do anything. I guess it was supposed to be used for some feature. I'm not really sure. But for the small downgrades that it has over the original GameCube, I'm going to put it in B tier. So next up, we have the Wii Classic Pro controller. It's a mouthful for me. Maybe not be for you, but I'm putting this one into A tier as well. If not just because it feels amazing, it has the thighs that the Wii Classic lacks. It fixes the ZR/ZL issue by putting them behind in a more traditional layout, I guess. But the only downgrades that it has compared to the Wii Classic is the shoulder buttons. The Wii Classic has these amazing analog triggers, but all four of the trigger buttons on the Wii Classic Pro are digital only. That's a slight downgrade, but the upgrades make it worth A tier, for me at least. So next up we have the Wii Remote Plus. I'm going to stick this one in B tier, only because it's got much better motion controls than the Wii Remote. It's literally a Wii Remote with better motion controls, as the name Motion Plus. It says Motion Plus inside at the bottom, so you gotta expect it's gonna be a better controller than the Wii Remote. But next up, we're going to go over the Wii U gamepad. Right here, this honking thing. I gotta put this sucker in D tier, just because of the huge size that it has. It's like got this like glossy finish too that gets all scrubbed up. It's got a slightly unconventional button layout. The ZL and ZR triggers, however, are exquisite. They're not analog like most great triggers are, but they are like these huge, like fat things that are just amazing to click down on. But it's just this hulking, unnecessary thing, and for that, I'm just gonna put it in D tier. So next up, it's the Wii U Pro controller. Some people have their doubts with this controller, and I have pros and cons. I'm honestly gonna put this in B tier. So the reason I'm putting this in B tier is because I'm just gonna compare this one to the Wii Classic Pro. It's wireless for starts. It doesn't have to plug into the Wii remote like the Classic Pro does. It has like this more ergonomic feel to it. But the downgrades are that it has like these ZL and ZR triggers that are supposed to be analog. I mean, if you look at the triggers, they look like they were originally planned to be analog, but they just made them digital, which just makes no sense. At least with the ZL and ZR buttons on the Wii Pro Classic Pro, whatever, it looks like it's supposed to be digital, because it's just these thin little things that make sense. Instead, the Wii Pro controller looks like an Xbox 360 trigger, except it's not analog. It just messes with me a little bit. The other reason is the unconventional button layout. This made a lot more sense on the gamepad, because you would much rather access on like this huge thing that takes up like this much space to hold. You'd much rather have like, what I'm trying to say is that the button layout makes more sense on the gamepad just because of its size. On the Pro controller, it just feels kind of awkward to have the buttons like backwards from what they usually are. Usually you rather see just the analog sticks on the straight bottom like you would with PlayStations and controllers like that. Or you see like the alternating of Switch Pro controller, Xbox 360, that kind of thing. So normally you see one of those. This is like the only like standard controller that I've ever seen that has that layout. It just doesn't feel right. For those downgrades, I'm putting it in B tier. However, it has a much better battery life than most of these wireless controllers. Like, the Wavebird is a really good controller that it has a decent battery life. The gamepad has a horrible battery life. I found that the Wii Remote Plus has a slightly better battery life than the Wii Remote, but they both have pretty good battery life. But the Wii U Pro controller, I don't actually own one of these, but I've heard that they can last up to like 80 hours, which is beyond insane for a controller of that age. But anyways, let's move on. So next up, we have the Switch Joy-Cons. And I'm putting these in F tier. Now, hear me out for a second. Of course, you have all the random technology, freaking NFC reader. HD rumble, which is not that necessary. You have like these compact things that are supposed to fit into your hand. The problem is, I have big hands. I mean, y'all are gonna put this a lot higher on your tier list if you ever make one. But I have such big hands that it's just so uncomfortable to hold one in each hand. And holding one by itself is useless. The SL and SR, which are these small things right here along this side, they are so bad. They're like these little tic tac things about that big. How do you expect me to click that? And then there are the Joy-Con grips, which are just really annoying. And overall, it's just not the best controller. I mean, it does have the traditional layout going for it. It has these huge plus and minus buttons that are amazing to click. But the triggers just kind of feel weird to me. I mean, it makes more sense on the Pro Controller. They basically have the same, like, triggers, I guess. But the Pro Controller, it makes more sense because it's going to be wider. Instead, it just feels so cramped in my hand. I'll admit, it's revolutionary for the fact that it's that tiny, has that much technology, like all the motion controls and stuff that it has. And you can slide it into the, like, I'm not sure what to call it. It's this little holder that allows you to put them together to make it an actual controller. I mean, I guess that's much better, obviously, than just the two Joy-Cons. But overall, it just has so many things to me that just make no sense. That's why it's going in F tier. So finally, the Switch Pro Controller, and you probably already know where this is going. You have the Switch Joy-Cons right here. So you'd think I would put it lower, like here or here. But no, this thing deserves S tier. It's so comfortable to hold in your hands. The thumbsticks just feel amazing. The D-pad is just like this comfortable, like, rubbery thing that is just so fun to like graze your fingers across. The buttons feel so premium. And then you have the triggers, which I mentioned didn't really work on the Joy-Cons, but they work so much better on the Pro Controller. So all those reasons, plus the fact that it has a really good battery life. I mean, the only downgrade of the Pro Controller is the price point. These things sell for $70 most of the time, retail value, which is just crazy. But that's the only problem that I found when using the Switch Pro Controller. So this is my tier list. So if you want to make your own, go to the link that you see right here. And that will allow you to create your own Wii era controller tier list. So that's going to be all for this time, guys. I'll see you later.